Detroit's skyline is defined by a set of towers that for nearly half a century have embodied the city's ambitions, its struggles, and its efforts at rebirth. That complex, known as the Renaissance Center, or the RenCen, has long stood as a reminder of Detroit's automotive legacy and its once unshakable role in American industry. Yet in April 2024, a stunning announcement from General Motors placed the RenCen at the center of a storm. The company, which has called the complex home since the 1990s, revealed that it would be relocating its headquarters to a brand new development just a short walk away. The move raised more than a few eyebrows, not only because GM owns the RenCen outright, but also because it seemed to signal the end of an era. The news did not merely concern a corporate address change, it struck at the heart of what the Renaissance Center means to Detroit. For decades, it has been both a literal and symbolic anchor for the city's downtown. GM's decision to leave has prompted questions about what will become of the massive complex, how much it will cost to reimagine it, and whether public dollars should be used to reshape a landmark so closely tied to Detroit's identity. To understand how the city and GM arrived at this crossroads, it is necessary to go back to the very beginning, when the RenCen was conceived as a bold act of optimism. In the early 1970s, Detroit was already slipping from its mid-century golden age. Factories that had fueled the post-war boom were beginning to close, the city's tax base was eroding, and many residents were leaving for suburban communities. It was in this climate that Henry Ford II, grandson of the legendary auto pioneer, launched an idea he hoped would reverse Detroit's fortunes. Backed by the city's mayor, Ford spearheaded the development of a massive riverfront complex that would combine office space, retail, entertainment, and a luxury hotel. It was touted as the largest privately funded real estate project in the world at the time. Construction costs were estimated at $500 million in 1971, the equivalent of nearly $4 billion today. When the first phase opened on July 1, 1976, the Renaissance Center instantly became the most prominent feature of Detroit's skyline. The complex consisted of 5 gleaming glass towers made of more than 2 million square feet of reflective surface and nearly 500,000 cubic yards of concrete. At the center stood the Detroit Plaza Hotel, a cylindrical skyscraper that at the time held the distinction of being the tallest hotel-only building in the world. The building's summit featured a revolving restaurant that offered diners, sweeping views of the city and the Detroit River. The 4 surrounding office towers each rose 39 stories and added millions of square feet of commercial capacity. Later, 2 additional towers would be added, further expanding what came to be known as a city within a city. The RenCen was more than architecture. It was an attempt at revival. It was designed to lure suburban commuters back downtown, to create a vibrant urban hub, and to symbolize that Detroit still mattered on the world stage. But despite its scale and ambition, the complex struggled from the start. Critics described the interior as confusing and fortress-like, with corridors that seemed designed to keep people in rather than invite them through. While it remained the most visible part of Detroit's skyline, it never quite fulfilled its role as a bustling urban magnet. That began to change in 1996, when General Motors made a dramatic move. The automaker purchased the Renaissance Center and shifted its global headquarters there, sending a powerful message that it remained committed to the city that had defined its identity. GM poured money into renovations, spending about $500 million to overhaul the complex by 2003. One of the most notable additions was the Winter Garden, a 5-story glass atrium that provided a bright new link to the riverfront and gave the complex a more welcoming face. The renovation also aimed to untangle the confusing interior design and make the space more navigable for employees and visitors alike. For Detroit, GM's investment was more than cosmetic. It was symbolic. At a time when the city was reeling from decades of decline, seeing its largest automaker double down on the RenCen reinforced a sense of hope. The headquarters became a source of civic pride and a reminder that Detroit could still attract and retain marquee employers. The Marriott Hotel within the Central Tower remained the tallest all-hotel skyscraper in the Western Hemisphere, and the surrounding office towers continued to define the downtown skyline. For years, the RenCen buzzed with thousands of workers and visitors, cementing its role as both an economic engine and an emblem of Detroit's resilience. But as the years passed, challenges began to mount once again. Suburban office parks, with their ample parking and lower rents, remained a strong competitor. And then came the COVID-19 pandemic, which reshaped the way companies viewed office space forever. By 2024, Detroit's downtown office vacancy rate had climbed to about 25%, one of the highest rates in the country. GM's own use of the RenCen had diminished dramatically. Compared to 2019, only about one-fifth of the daily workforce was still commuting there in 2024. Foot traffic, including visitors, was less than 40% of pre-pandemic levels. For a sprawling complex built to house thousands, the emptiness was impossible to ignore. It was in this context that GM made its headline-grabbing announcement in April 2024. The company would be relocating its headquarters from the Renaissance Center to the Hudson's Detroit development, a $1.4 billion project rising on the site of the old J.L. Hudson's department store just half a mile away. The original Hudson store had been demolished in 1998 in what was then the largest controlled implosion in history, leaving behind a vacant block in the heart of downtown. For years, the site symbolized decline. But in 2017, construction began on a new project that promised to transform it into a hub of activity. Hudson's Detroit is designed to include a 685-foot skyscraper, which will become the second tallest building in both Detroit and Michigan, as well as a 12-story mid-rise building. Together, they will offer retail, office, residential, and hotel space, along with event and exhibition areas and an underground garage with room for 700 vehicles. Delays, including those brought on by the pandemic, slowed progress, but by April 2024, the tower had topped out, just days before GM announced its decision to move. Under a 15-year lease, GM will take the top office floors of the mid-rise building, while also establishing a public showroom on the ground floor to display its vehicles. The choice to lease rather than own puzzled some observers, given that GM already controls the RenCen. But CEO Mary Barra explained that the Hudson space is a better fit for the company's evolving workforce. With fewer employees commuting daily, GM no longer needs the vast capacity of the Renaissance Center. Instead, it is seeking a more flexible, collaborative, and modern office environment while remaining firmly anchored in downtown Detroit. The decision leaves an enormous question hanging over the Renaissance Center. What happens to this sprawling, iconic complex once its primary tenant departs? GM still owns the property, but real estate development is not the company's core business. To figure out a path forward, it partnered with Dan Gilbert's Bedrock Detroit, the same firm overseeing the Hudson's project. Together with the city, GM and Bedrock unveiled a $1.6 billion redevelopment proposal in late 2024. GM has attempted to soften the opposition by pledging that any financial returns from the redevelopment would be directed to support Detroit's education system. Yet this promise seems to come only from GM, not from Bedrock, which is contributing a larger share of the funding. The lack of clarity has left many skeptical. Meanwhile, real estate experts generally agree that leaving the Renaissance Center untouched is not a viable option if the riverfront is to thrive. For Detroit, the dilemma is profound. The debate is far from over, and in the months and years ahead, Detroiters will be watching closely. Will the RenCen be partially preserved, radically transformed, or perhaps even reduced to rubble in an unprecedented demolition? Whatever the outcome, the decision will shape not just the skyline, but the story of a city that has fought for decades to reinvent itself.